But I think the biggest barrier to grammar schools being a source of social mobility was the 11 plus itself. And it didn't take long for researchers to realize that although now there was apparently this meritocratic selection where the hidden talent that was buried in each of us could be winkled out by means of this magic test, it didn't take long for statistically it to be demonstrated that the people who were doing well on the 11 plus tended to come from the same social background as the people who had paid to go to grammar school before the war. In other words, people from middle and upper middle class backgrounds. And working class children, generally speaking, I mean, some did better than they had done. Some of these barriers were removed. But the extra advantage for working class kids that the 11 plus provide that might get them into grammar school was small. And that was something that was already by 55, 56 being demonstrated by statisticians. And in fact, the idea of social mobility, which is so much with us today, was more or less invented through observation of the new bipartite system, the new 11 plus system, because policymakers and social scientists thought this is a great experiment. We will find out whether education can be a major motor of social mobility, and the 11 plus applied nationally is a chance to see whether the existing social structure is artificial and whether it will be mixed up by, as I said, finding talent in everyone rather than just in those people who had inherited social standing. But as soon as they started to look at it, they began to realize actually it hadn't worked out the way they'd imagined. And actually they found something that made them even more puzzled, frustrated, and which is still a source of puzzlement and frustration today. They found that actually the 11 plus did a pretty good job of assessing intelligence as measured by an exam, which you would expect. If intelligence is defined by passing a certain kind of exam, then passing a certain kind of exam will tell you if you have intelligence. But that didn't change very much the social composition of the selected group. And from that, some people began to say, oh, well, maybe working class people are just, maybe talent is not evenly distributed. Maybe working class people are just born dumb. And there are people who think that today. Of course, I'd say most of the social scientists who observed this moved on a stage and began to think, well, maybe our idea of intelligence as defined by an exam at age 11 is too limited a measure of intelligence, and it doesn't measure potential to acquire intelligence. And that whole idea of education is not something which just drew on innate intelligence, but which helped you acquire intelligence. That was a novelty in the 1950s. But it was a novelty that would then push attempts to reform the educational system and not any longer stick strictly to the 11 plus as a way of measuring potential.